At 15 anti-maritime on December 18, 2025, the Kirch Bridge became the stage for one of the most sophisticated drone operations in modern military history. 500 tons of Russian high explosives disguised as a Christmas peace train were vaporized in an intense fireball. Russian air defense operators watched in horror as their electronic countermeasures, powerful enough to disrupt communications across an entire region, proved utterly impotent against the incoming swarm. What Moscow envisioned as a geopolitical checkmate transformed into a humiliating demonstration of asymmetric warfare. The question military analysts worldwide would soon ask: how did a coordinated pack of artificial intelligence enable drones systematically dismantle an air defense network valued in the billions? To comprehend the tactical brilliance of this operation, we must rewind exactly 15 minutes. At 200 hours, a ghost skimmed 15 feet above the freezing waves of the Sea of Azov. This was the Golem, Ukraine's heavy-lift mothership drone, but field engineers had transformed this platform into a hybrid beast, retrofitting it with a gasoline-powered generator that dramatically extended both range and payload capacity. This crude but brilliant modification represented a battlefield innovation that defined successful campaigns. 150 miles away inside a bunker in Zaporizhzhia, the operator, called Sign Gamer, wiped sweat from his palms. His display showed a terrifying countdown. 45 seconds until they entered the engagement zone. Directly ahead lay the prize. Rolling across the 11.2-mile railway section of the Kirch Bridge at 50 miles per hour was what Russian propaganda called the Christmas peace train, draped in white banners claiming humanitarian aid for Crimea. But physics does not accommodate lies. Ukrainian satellite reconnaissance noticed the suspension systems on those rail cars were compressed to absolute structural limits. Thermal imaging detected distinctive heat plumes radiating from inside. These were not blankets. This was the unmistakable thermal signature of solid rocket fuel motors. This was not humanitarian aid. This was a mobile fortress carrying enough ordnance to sustain a major offensive for 2 weeks. After recent F-16 strikes embarrassed Moscow, the Russians had not merely repaired the bridge, they transformed it into a fortress. They installed Pantsir S-1M systems on 100-foot towers to eliminate low-altitude blind spots. S-400 batteries swept 250 miles of airspace. Heavy-duty anti-drone nets stretched between the arches like spider webs. Russian commanders were supremely confident. Monitoring displays while sipping tea convinced nothing could penetrate this wall. When thermal cameras detected a lone Magura V-5 sea drone, they likely laughed. The same old trick, they thought, preparing 30mm cannons. They were right about one thing. It was a trick, but they were catastrophically wrong about the direction. While weapons fixated on sea level, Golem motherships were inbound, about to expose Russia's Christmas deception. The first Golem was the Loudman, designed to create noise and exhaust defensive resources. The second was the Silent Executioner, running dark above the waves. At 0 for anti-maritime, Golem number 1 executed its choreography with textbook precision. This hybrid variant climbed aggressively to 1,000 feet, deliberately exposing itself to Russian Big Bird acquisition radar. This was the opening move. The operator at Kirch Defense Station observed a solid contact. Air target, large radar cross-section, bearing to 110. As the fire control radar achieved lock, the Golem unleashed chaos. First, belly baiters opened, releasing 6 wild Hornet decoys. Simultaneously, underwing pylons released 6 more. Within seconds, 12 cheap airframes loaded with aluminum corner reflectors screamed away in multiple vectors, climbing, diving, Jin King like angry hornets. To Russian fire control computers, that single return exploded into 13 high-speed targets. It presented exactly like saturation attack. The Russian commander identified the largest return, the mothership, and designated it Priority 1. Kill the carrier, he ordered. A Pantsir on the North Stellar SL, he wetted turret. A-57E6 missile leapt off the rail, accelerating to Mach 3, locked onto the Golem's heat signature. The Ukrainian operator received missile launch warning and yanked controls, banking hard left. But a lumbering mothership cannot outrun hypersonic missiles. Then something unexpected occurred. One cheap decoy, flying erratically, drifted into the missile's path. The proximity fuse detonated 200 feet short. The Golem was rocked by shockwave, shrapnel peppering its fuselage. But the gasoline engine kept screaming, smoking and shaking. It dove toward the sea, escaping radar horizon. Mission accomplished. The decoy saved a $50,000 asset by sacrificing $300. The Russian commander cursed. He missed the target, but 12 decoys still swarmed his towers, forcing continuous engagement. At 205 anti-maritime, complexity doubled. The Magura V-5 drone joined the engagement. Its radar warning receiver detected lock from a Russian Raptor patrol boat. The Magura executed a sharp 40-degree turn at high speed. On its deck, for modified first-person view drones spun up rotors and lifted off vertically, screaming toward bridge pylons. Russian defenders faced a nightmare. For drones swarming from sea surface, 12 decoys diving from altitude, 16 targets converging simultaneously from multiple vectors. This overwhelms even advanced integrated air defense. The Pantsir commander on South Tower screamed orders, activating auto-engage. The 30mm cannons, firing to 1,500 rounds per minute, unleashed tungsten penetrators at sea targets. The Magura danced through water geysers, dodging tracers. But physics got up. Anchored 12.7mm round punched to its Starlink antenna. The Magura spun out dead. A Raptor patrol boat delivered a missile hit. The sea drone disintegrated. Russians cheered, believing they won the naval battle, but the sky was still full of threats. Pantsir systems launched salvos at wild Hornet decoys. The sky erupted. The South Tower Pantsir locked 3 decoys diving in formation. 357 E-6 missiles streaked off rails at 2,900 miles per hour. The first drone, cheap plywood carrying a radar reflector, attempted a clumsy roll. Too slow. The missile detonated 5 meters away, shredding it into confetti. The second decoyed abruptly, dropping 50 feet as a missile passed overhead. The proximity fuse failed against a small plastic target. It splashed into the sea, wasting a $120,000 interceptor. The operator cursed and switched to 30mm cannons. Tracers tore the second drone apart in sparks and battery fire. For first-person view drones from the Magura weaved through bridge arches. Russian conscripts opened fire with PKM machine guns and IGLA missiles. One drone took a 7.62mm round through its flight controller and spiraled into a concrete pylon. The bridge held. The last 2 decoys climbed vertically to draw fire from the north tower. The commander took the bait, firing for missiles into seconds. Overkill, wasteful, but effective. Both drones vaporized mid-air, debris raining onto the roadway. The shooting stopped. Smoke from 16 destroyed drones drifted across the strait, blinding thermal cameras. The Russian network had performed perfectly. 100% interception. Inside the command vehicle, operators celebrated with high fives. Clean sweep, one announced. They tried to swarm, mustn't we crush them? But they were not analyzing tactical mathematics. A Pantsir carries exactly 12 ready missiles. Reloading takes 15 minutes and requires a crank rock. In 90 seconds of panic, South Tower expended 10 missiles, North Tower fired 8. They burned millions in hypersonic interceptors to eliminate plywood toys worth hundreds. Simultaneously, they cranked Krasukha for jamming systems to maximum, flooding electromagnetic spectrum with white noise. They believed they created an impenetrable electronic shield. In reality, they were blinding themselves. While Pantsir sat empty, barrels glowing red, and jammers screaming at full power, nobody monitored ammunition counters dropping into critical read. More importantly, nobody observed that in the shadow of drifting smoke, skimming 10 feet above waves, a second golem had bypassed the kill zone. 2 miles out, it had not fired a shot. It was waiting for guns to go silent. Kiev was not finished. Just as Russian operators caught their breath, Big Bird radar screamed again. High-speed vampire inbound from Odessa, Mach 0.9. A single R-360 Neptune cruise missile skimming wave tops. Pantsirs were out of ammunition. Russians used the big guns. The S-400 battery on Crimean coast engaged. The interception appeared textbook. The S-400 struck the Neptune half a mile out, directly upward. A massive explosion rocked the strait. Russians cheered again. But then something unusual occurred. The explosion did not dissipate. Caught by sea breeze, it bloomed into a massive cloud that rolled over the bridge deck. This was not standard high explosive. Ukrainian engineers had replaced the payload with multispectral aerosol smoke and hot metallic chaff. As thick fog engulfed the bridge, it did not merely block vision. Hot particles blinded thermal cameras. The chaff wall absorbed radar waves like a black hole. Russian screens went from clear to white out. They had intercepted a sophisticated blind bomb, a decoy warhead designed for sensor denial. For 3 minutes, their billion-dollar network stared at a brick wall, operationally useless. That was when Golem No. 2 made its move. Hidden behind the electronic curtain, the second mothership opened its weapons bay. Through the onboard 4,000-pixel camera, the target came into view. The graphite cloud dissipated just enough for optics to see the bridge. But Russian radars remained blind. There it was, the Christmas peace train, rolling at 45 miles per hour, unaware. Thermal filter showed bright red hot spots glowing through steel walls of cars 12 through 18. Solid rocket fuel. Target confirmed. Drop the Vanguard, Gamer whispered. The belly bay opened. 6 wild Hornet first-person view drones dropped out. These pathfinders streaked toward the train, drawing final defense. Russian rain guards opened fire with AK-12 rifles and PKM machine guns from vestibules. A desperate wall of lead. To Vanguard drones' warheads spinning into the sea. A third tangled in the anti-drone net. But Russians focused on the wrong threat. Above them, the Golem released the actual payload. Wing lamps snapped open. 6 artificial intelligence-enabled wild Hornets dropped into slipstream. These were executioners. Each carried an Nvidia Jetson computing module running autonomous target recognition and a heavy shape-charged warhead. As they separated, they severed radio links, rendering Russian jamming irrelevant. They formed a V formation. The lead drone detected the steel net. The artificial intelligence executed the Cobra pop-up. In perfect unison, 6 killer drones pulled up hard, rocketing vertically over the net with inches to spare. Russian guards looked up in horror as drones stalled 100 feet above, nosed over, and locked onto ammunition cars. Pantsir missiles were expended. Autocannons jammed from overheating. Radars blind. Guards out of ammunition. No defensive options remained. Gravity took over. The drones dove. To 15 anti-Mary Dean. Impact. The first wild Hornets land into Car 14's roof. The drone carried a PG-7 VL-shaped charge. Upon contact, a piezoelectric trigger detonated the explosive, creating a molten copper jet moving at 25,000 feet per second. The physics were merciless. The copper jet punched through thin steel roof like a hot needle through butter, screaming into cargo directly into stacked 120mm artillery shells. The result was instantaneous. Shells detonated sympathetically. A fireball erupted, expanding at 15,700 miles per hour. Blast pressure peaked at 400 pounds per square inch, liquefying steel walls. The shockwave derailed cars forward and behind, tossing 60-ton wagons into the air like toys. Drones 2 and 3 dove into chaos. Their artificial intelligence locked onto heat signatures of rocket fuel containers in cars 16 and 17. They struck with precision. Solid rocket motors ignited instantly but did not explode. They propelled. Burning motors broke loose, spinning wildly across the bridge deck like giant fiery pinwheels, spraying burning propellant. At 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, steel rails began glowing cherry red. At 1,000 degrees, structural steel loses 50% load-bearing strength. At 2,000 degrees, it behaves like heated plastic. Tracks warped and buckled under intense heat, permanently fusing wreckage to bridge. The Christmas peace train transformed into a 1,000-foot dragon of fire. Secondary explosions rippled as Iranian Shahed 136 drones cooked off warheads. Russian operators watched security feeds cut out, lenses melted by heat. The damage extended beyond immediate explosion. 500 tons of ammunition, enough for 2 weeks of operations, was vaporized. Golem drones, mission complete, turned toward Ukrainian coast, leaving a bonfire visible from orbit. The bridge did not collapse structurally, but might as well have. Intense thermal exposure compromised structural integrity. Rails were melted slag. Concrete pillars spall and fractured. No train would cross for months. Moscow's 24-hour delivery service was canceled. They were forced back to slow, vulnerable ferries. The economic analysis tells the final story with brutal clarity. Ukraine expended approximately $200,000 on this operation. Russia lost a $50 million cargo, $10 million train, and billions in strategic logistics capability. Bridge repair costs alone would exceed $100 million. Moscow intended to send a message with their Christmas cargo. Ukraine sent an unmistakable reply written in fire and twisted steel returned to sender. This engagement represents a fundamental shift in military doctrine. Traditional air defense systems, designed to intercept aircraft and missiles, proved systematically vulnerable to coordinated swarm tactics employing cheap, expendable drones as decoys and strike platforms. Russians expended millions in interceptors and thousands of cannon rounds to destroy hundreds of dollars worth of decoys. While the actual strike package waited patiently for defensive exhaustion, the integration of artificial intelligence enabled autonomous guidance, allowing drones to complete missions under total jamming, represents a tactical innovation that current doctrine has no effective counter for. When guidance systems simply ignore jamming by switching to autonomous optical targeting, traditional electronic warfare becomes operationally irrelevant. The lesson for military planners is uncomfortable but unavoidable expensive. Centralized defense systems can be systematically defeated by cheap, distributed attack platforms employing coordinated deception and saturation. The era of cost-effective defense may be ending. The era of inevitable penetration through overwhelming numbers may be beginning. So here is the tactical question: if you commanded this Ukrainian operation, would you have targeted the locomotive to halt the train first, creating a stationary target, or gone directly for ammunition cars as executed? The decision involves trade-offs between guaranteed target location versus operational surprise and defensive reaction time. The future of warfare was demonstrated in 3 minutes above the Kirch Bridge. Military establishments worldwide are watching, learning, and adapting. The question is whether they are adapting quickly enough.